Okay, so how do I use this? Well, through a series of repeated issues over and over again, eventually violence becomes the choice, the method of choice to revolutionize the Colombian society. The first of these things that happened in a series of events was the assassination of Gaitán. Jorge Gaitán was like one of these huge, larger-than-life leaders within Colombian society. He was part of the Liberal Party. Throughout the history of Colombia, there are basically two parties. There's the Liberals and the Conservatives. Jorge was actually a liberal, although they said he had communist sympathies. Once he was assassinated, people were very angry. And not only were they angry, but they went through the streets of Bogota and they rioted. Now, one of the groups that was responsible for this rioting were the communists. The communists made radio announcements. The communists also went into churches. Okay, this was like mass rioting. Communists also went into churches and drug out priests and killed them and destroyed things within the church, things like that. So they were part of the violence that occurred with this and part of the problem. Because, I mean, this was like literally someone who was really representing the people. People believed in this guy. And once he was assassinated, and they don't know who did it. I mean, they've even said that the Communist Party did it. They said that the Colombian government did it. They said the United States did it. They said that the liberals did it, his own party. They don't know. Okay? So that was the first thing. And that's 1947, they sent those groups, and 1948 is when they literally sent the communist guerrilla leaders in right after that. In 1954, okay, so they're sitting here in the jungle this whole time. 1954, and the Communist Party is still there. Okay, the liberals and the conservatives and the communists, they're all fighting. This is like pure violence, all of them. So the liberals have their groups, and the peasants, of course, are pulled to different sides. So basically, whoever the landowner is that they're working for, or whatever party that person is, they are pulled towards that party's side and do what that person wants them to do. They don't really have much of a choice. We're still living in this type of latifundied society. We have large landowners basically dictating to the peasants as to what they're going to do. And even though this was ended, I mean, they still had this mentality. It was still there. So in 1954, the Communist Party is outlawed. It's a problem, right? Now, they didn't have a lot of popular support. They only had like 25,000 members at their apex, okay? It's not a lot. But they're outlawed by the government, by the liberals and the conservatives. 4 years later, something else happens. The National Front is implemented. And this is the crookedest deal you've ever seen, okay? The liberals and the conservatives get together, and it's called the National Front, and they say, we're going to switch the presidency back and forth between both of us. And not only are we going to do that, but we're going to split the Congress. Okay, they're also called House and Senate. We're going to split the Congress between each of us. So we'll each have as many members. And of course, the Communist Party is not there. I'm going to explain in a second, the Americans, or the United States is behind this too. There's some issues with that. So there's, I mean, as soon as that happens, they come out. At first, they were going to ally themselves with the liberals. And they actually, maybe we could choose peace. And no, that doesn't happen. I mean, the violence continues. This is why this is so difficult. There's so much violence going on constantly. There is economic prosperity under Pinillos. I think I talk about it in the third slide, the radicalization of the Communist Party. But Pinillos, there was a period called La Violencia, which was a period of extreme violence. It was split by Pinillos' dictatorship. From 53 to 58 is arrest. And what he was trying to do is pull both sectors of society, all the sectors of society back in. He actually forgave the guerrillas. So if you come back into society, we'll forgive you. He was trying to unite everyone. He was trying to create economic prosperity. He even tried to give guerrillas like social organizations to get jobs, okay, and funding, things like that. However, he was overthrown. But he was successful economically. So that was certainly frustrating, when you're communist and you have a capitalist society that's prospering. That's kind of problematic. 1964, the United States is here with Kennedy in the background. And you've got the Alliance for Progress with Kennedy coming in, okay, where you're giving literally money to Latin America for economic and military purposes. One of the biggest military purposes is to defeat communism. Okay, so the United States is there in the background. They're giving money. The culmination of this is this Plan Lazo. This is in 1964. the Marcatalia region is literally attacked by 16,000 troops, Colombian troops. Now, the reason that this is attacked is because the communists decided that they were just going to go and take over about a third of the country of Colombia. They just literally would go take the territory, say it's mine, and that's it. Okay, so they're not, they've also been preaching proletarian revolution since about 1948. So they are, certainly a challenge to the government also. So anyway, they come in, 16,000 people, trying to get rid of this communist area. The United States is providing air support in the background. And they only killed like a few hundred, like 100 people if that. Like the communists kind of came out with a victory on this at the end, but this is one of the reasons they say in their writings, they said, after this Plan Laza, we were attacked, we're coming back out. Of course, they were also taking over Colombia piece by piece too. Of course, the Americans were in this. Lastly, the School of Americans in Fort Benning, Georgia, is providing training to the military leaders, the Colombian military leaders particularly, assistance in fighting guerrillas. There's been a lot of talk about them teaching torture tactics. I don't know where I stand with that whole thing because I've seen stuff that has said they were providing torture tactics. I've also seen things on the other side and people who are in the military who had access to confidential documents, things like that, security access, they say, no, that never happened. But they certainly were providing training, we know that. Whether it was torture tactics, that's the problem, but they were providing military training and ways to fight guerrillas. In the eyes of the FARC, the United States is much worse than the Colombian government. The United States is actually one of the major reasons for their radicalization, which is interesting, because I have a quote from Marion saying, the United States is worse than anything. These pigs, these imperialists, these Yankees, they're worse than what we're fighting with the Colombian government and the military. And of course, in the end, they don't have this popular support. This is also very frustrating. They've been in the jungles basically since 1948. The FARC forms in 1966. Actually, 1964 is when they have a meeting and they form. 1966 is their official creation date, right after Plan Lazo. This was the final straw. But nothing happened. So it's several years of there's not enough popular support. There's no proletarian revolution. Nothing's happening. So it helps to choose violence, aggression. Aggression becomes the final straw, terrorism. Okay, there's also the radicalization of the Communist Party that's involved in this. So I talked here about the Communist Party starts as more benign. Okay, they're wanting to just basically defend peasants from the military. Like I said, you have widespread violence. So they're wanting to defend the peasants from the military. They began using violence in 1948, creating these guerrilla groups, but everybody has guerrilla groups and they're all fighting and it's a big giant mess. Still this is the periods of La Violencia, so 1948 to 1965. This is Pinillas, 53 to 58, his regime. They're outlawed in 1954, 1958. The National Front, as time progresses, they're becoming more and more violent after these things happen. So they started more so with, wanting to help the peasants to give them a better station life, create the communist society. As time progresses, they get more and more violence, then they create a terrorist organization. And I kind of already went through all of these things. So they radicalize, they become violent, they choose violence.